All right. So today's question is there a perfect height and weight for men and women over 40? And then the follow-up question to that would be if there is a perfect height and weight for men and women over 40 or 50 or 60, how do we measure it? And I came across the idea for this video based on my last one when I talked about ideal body weight. I talked a lot about BMI, and we'll get into like how we would measure the perfect height and weight. And a lot of people had a lot of opinions. I talked almost exclusively about BMI in my last video. And so I wanted to give a fair chance to talk about the other two that were mentioned a lot in the comments, which are body fat percentage and waist to hip ratio or hip to waist ratio. I can't remember. I always get them inverted, so I apologize, but it's the ratio of waist and hips, and we'll go over it in a minute. And we'll talk about which one's better. And I'll give you my opinion, as always. You have the right to be wrong. I'm just kidding. But you can definitely drop a comment and let me know if you have a preference on which one you would track for your weight loss. Well, let's get right into the heart of this here. So first up is BMI or body mass index. And this is what your family physician here, let me get rid of that view because that looks crazy. All right, we'll go with that. This is what I see in the hospital when I'm doing triage for a patient in the emergency department and I enter their height and weight. I'm going to see their BMI. It's what probably your family physician uses when they're talking about it. And there's a lot of criticism in the medical community as well as in the YouTube community about BMI. One comment that I got last video was BMI is a joke. One of the criticisms is that it doesn't really take into account muscle mass, and we'll see some examples of that here in a second. But that is true. It doesn't really do a good job of accounting for muscle mass. But it doesn't matter. The normal range for BMI is 18.5 to 24.9. Regardless of if you're a male or female. So the way you would determine this is you're going to know your height, hopefully, because I'm assuming I'm talking to adults 40 and over. We all know our height. And then you're going to step on a scale, get your weight, and you're going to go online and you're just going to Google BMI calculator or whatever. You're going to use one and you're going to enter your gender, your age, as well as your height and your weight. And then it's going to give you a score. And then you fall into one of these categories: normal, overweight, and obese. I can tell you anecdotally from working in the emergency department, if your BMI says you're obese, there's a good chance you're obese. So again, is any measurement perfect? I don't know. My point about this is, and I'll move to the next slide, is when I hear the argument that BMI doesn't take into account muscle mass, look, if either one of these two people walked into the emergency department and I was entering their stuff in, I don't need an advanced degree. I don't need to go to medical school to realize that their BMI might not accurately reflect their health status. Okay. So clearly, a BMI is not, I don't think it's designed to be like so precise that we're going to measure it like, I don't know, like if we're splitting atoms or something. That's, at least in my mind, that's not what I would use BMI for. When I started this journey, when I made that last video, I mentioned that what I was finding was that when I was setting my goal and I was getting closer to my goal weight, I realized that, and I'll go back to the BMI thing, I was just slightly in the overweight range. And I can tell you for today's purposes, I weighed in at 189 pounds, which puts my BMI at 25.6. So I'm just a hair over 25. Or 24.9. So I'm slightly overweight at 189 pounds. And I can tell you that as I look at myself and I am, honest with myself about not only what I look like, but where I'm at in my height and weight journey, that is relatively accurate. Now, I also think I'm healthy, and we'll talk about that as we move along, or I'm getting more healthy, I guess is my point. So that's BMI, but keep in mind it's not infallible. It's not a perfect tool, and I don't think it's meant to have the specificity that some of its harshest critics are assuming that it should when they level the criticism at it. So that's just my 2 cents on that. So, but it's what's most commonly used in medicine. Next up is body fat percentage. There were a lot of people that said that body fat percentage was their go-to as far as an accurate measurement of body fat. And I listed on here some methods for how you would determine your body fat percentage. And the first the first four of them, you're not going to be able to do at home, and it's going to cost you some money to do. And quite frankly, unless you're an elite athlete or in some kind of like, I don't know, contest or something where there's a lot of money involved, I don't see why you would go through the hoops of trying to get one of these different body weight or body fat percentage methods. So skin calipers, that's what's in the picture. If you're going to do skin fold calipers, I think I would rely on someone who is trained to do them. There's also a tape test we used to do in the Army. My wife was a medic. I should have had Jesse in here to talk about that. But, I've seen it done. I'm not familiar with it. Again, they're objective, but they are technique sensitive. And that's why I would recommend you have someone who's trained and someone who's going to do it the same way every single time. Otherwise, you're not going to get super accurate results. And then body fat scales. And so from my last video, I actually got motivated about this. I was like, you know what? Maybe I should check this out. So I actually went out and bought this scale right here. It's pretty slick. It's only like $20 on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description if anybody's interested, an affiliate link in the description. There's an app you download on your phone. It gives you some pretty good detailed information here. Now, I have to say this about these body fat percentage scales. Of all the methods that I just went through of how to determine your body fat percentage, this is the least accurate. Particularly the taller you are and the thinner you are, it's supposed to be even less accurate. But it is interesting to see the data. And again, if we're not talking about getting so accurate that we want to be like at splitting atoms levels of accuracy, and we're just talking about looking at trends, and we're also doing some other things, I think this scale's as good as any other, and it's got this cool app that'll give you quite a bit of information. That is actually a screenshot that I took of all of the information that was on the app when I weighed in at 189. So you can see there, it calculated my BMI for me at 25.6, and my body fat percentage is 21.7%. So going back to the previous slide, the acceptable range for a man is between 18 to 24. That's not going to put you in the athlete range. That's just like your healthy range, your reasonably healthy body fat percentage range. And women, 25 to 31%. I think the other thing, and the reason why I have that asterisk by the acceptable range, the other thing that's important to point out about body fat percentages, there is no universally accepted normal range for body fat percentage. So that is something that's slightly different from BMI. A lot of people can argue whether BMI is the most accurate, but everyone agrees on the numbers. These are the numbers for men and women. With body fat percentage, depending upon your source, they might tell you slightly different numbers. So I am on the higher end of the acceptable range at 21.7%. And when I look at myself in the mirror, I can also tell you that if you know anything about weight loss and getting to the point where like you can see your abs and everything, and I realize where I'm at, I feel much better than my previous, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man days, but I got a ways to go before I would get to being able to see my abs clearly. So I'm thinking like at least 15%, maybe 10% body fat before I would do that, which would be fairly significant to go for from here. All right, so let's go to the very last one then. Now, this one probably got the most comments about people saying that this was the most accurate. I think the World Health Organization recommends the waist to hip ratio. And the way that you would measure your waist to hip ratio is you're going to measure the circumference of your waist and divide it by the circumference of your hips. And the way that you measure your waist would be from the top of your hip bone, which would be, they call the iliac crest, and the bottom of your ribs. So between the top of your hip bone and the bottom of your ribs, you're going to go to the halfway point, which should be just slightly above your belly button in most people, but we all have different anatomy. That's why you got to kind of not just go with the belly button or above it, but take a look at it. So you're going to breathe out and then measure it. Okay. And then with your hips, you're going to measure at the widest part of your buttocks to get your hip ratio. Now, here's a normal range. And again, what is normal, right? If you look on here, we talk about health risks. And so I put the normal ranges in that moderate category. But in from the data I read, even if you're in that moderate category, you still have some risk of health issues, right? So it's something to keep in mind. But my waist to hip ratio for this at 189 is 0.98. So as a male, if you look on the side there, I am just on the high end of moderate, according to this scale that I have up on the screen, just on the high end of that. So I'd have to lose a little bit more weight to get down into the low risk range. All right. So that's I guess my thought on this is hip to waist to hip ratio, blah. There's going to be a couple types of people that it's not going to work for. People less than 5 foot tall, children, right? But I don't know that we would want to be doing this on children anyway, but children, people less than 5 foot tall. And if your BMI is really high, like 35 plus kind of BMI, you're like morbidly obese, it's not going to be an accurate measurement either for you. So then that brings up the question then, which one's the best? How are we going to measure? And this is my thought. I'm sorry. Let me back up. Of all those measurements, so now we're measuring body weight, right? We got all that out of the way. So now we know our weight, we know our BMI, we know our body fat percent, maybe if you buy the scale, and we know our waist hip ratio. So you should follow this up, regardless of where you fall in this. You should follow this up by going to your family provider, whether it's a nurse practitioner, physician, whomever, and on your annual physical, and they're going to draw a comprehensive metabolic panel. This shouldn't be something you need to ask for. It should be pretty much standard practice for an internal med or family doctor to draw this once a year. And here's kind of what they look at. And I didn't go through all the different levels because I don't know that anybody really needs to know that per se for our purposes. But one, it's going to look at your fluid and electrolyte balance. It's going to look at your blood sugar levels, which is obviously important for if you have diabetes or not. Let me try and get a different screen here where I'm not taking up part of the thing. It's going to look at your kidney function and your liver function. And then, so that's what the comprehensive metabolic panel is going to look at. Is it possible that everything is normal in that range and you could still have an issue? Yes. And that's why I put the asterisk at the end, plus any other tests that your personal provider thinks that you need based on your personal situation. But like some examples could be cholesterol, triglyceride level. They would maybe want to look at your A1C, right? Because I could walk in on a fasting glucose test and my blood sugar would be okay. But if they look at my A1C, that's looking at my blood sugar over time. And so they could say, hey, dude, you probably were binged on ice cream for the last couple of months. You just cleaned yourself up before you came in for the physical. So in other tests, they could look at your, they could do thyroid, for example, a bunch of different things, but a comprehensive metabolic panel. So what I guess I'm saying with this is, sure, you can weigh yourself. You can look at your BMI. You can look at your body fat percentage, and you can look at your waist to hip ratio to help determine, are you healthy? But you also should look at your lab work too, right? Because this is your body. How's it functioning? All right. So it's a look under the hood, and everything else is a look at the exterior of the car, if that makes sense. All right. So what one's the best, in my opinion? And if you have an opinion of which one's the best, please leave it in the comments, because I did enjoy reading everybody's comments, because there were a lot of people that had a lot of opinions about which one was the best. And here's my answer to this. Of the three, which one will you do consistently? That's the first question you could ask yourself. If you're not going to measure your body fat, you don't have one of those scales, you're not interested in getting one of those scales that gives you your body fat percentage, then you're not. I don't think anybody's going to go and get in one of those bod pod things and have their percentage of body fat measured. It's just not realistic. You're not going to do it often enough. It would be counterproductive from a cost standpoint. So, are you going to use the tape measure to measure waist to hip ratio? You might, and I think there's nothing wrong with that if you want to. It's a great idea. I did it once, and I learned a little bit of information that I didn't have before. I'm going to do it again. But you have to be willing to do it, and you should also do it in a repeatable way that's as close to the same and not cheating. And why would someone cheat? Why do people lie to themselves about what they eat? Right? So you need to try to make it as objective as possible. And one good thing about the scale is the scale might not be 100% accurate. People say, well, is this calibrated? Really, I'm mostly just worried about trends. Am I trending in the direction I want? Don't really care that it's literally 189. No, as long as it was 190 and now it's 189. That's what I care about. Next thing I say is your eyeballs in the mirror. Like, how do you look to yourself? I'm making progress on my weight loss journey. How do I look? Next question, how do you feel? Do you feel better? Are you more energetic? Are you less out of breath when you go up the stairs or when you're walking? And then I think number 4 is probably the most important of all of them, is honesty and introspection. Like, really look at yourself. And I said in my previous video, as I was getting closer to healthy in the BMI, from a BMI standpoint, I was looking at myself in the mirror. I was feeling better, feeling much better. I was looking way better than I did in the previous pictures. But I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, if I weren't going to do anything on the fitness side, which I am, but if I weren't, I probably could use to lose a little bit more weight than where I'm currently at to be really healthy. Like, there's still a little bit of love handle action going on and some things like that. So that honesty and introspection is key. And then lastly, consult with your personal healthcare provider for your specific needs, because everyone's a little bit different. Some people might have arthritis, some people have previous injuries, men are different than women, etc. So is there a perfect height and weight for men and women over 40? No, there's not a perfect one. Just like we talked about ideal weight in the last video, the whole concept of ideal weight is a life insurance calculation, which they basically take at your height. They look at what weight lives the longest, what has the least likelihood of dying. And for me, at 6 foot tall, as a man, it's 177. And at 189, that's 12 more pounds. At 177, I'm pretty sure I could probably see my abs at that point if that were important to me. That would be pretty light. And I've probably been that weight when I was in the Army. I was fairly thin. I was running sub 6-minute miles. So I probably was in that 175-ish to 180-ish range. So I was close to the ideal weight from a life insurance standpoint in my 20s. Okay. But I'm 55 now. So no, there's no ideal weight. There's no perfect weight. Is there a perfect measurement of height and weight for men and women over 40? No, none of these are like accurate to the level that like I said, like we're splitting atoms. They all have their pros and their cons. So I think you want to take more of a global look. And frankly, if you have the capability to look at all 3, then good for you. I would, if I were, I would advise you to buy that scale. Whether you get it off our affiliate link or not, I don't really care about that. But because it's cool information to have, and it just gives you more data to look at. But I think for the average person just trying to lose weight and be more healthy, we're adults, we know our height, we can step on a scale, we get our weight, and we can take a look at BMI and say, okay, are we trending in the right direction? So that's my best thing. I'm not a BMI hater. I know it has limitations. And if and when I ever get as big as that one dude, I am, by the way, going to buy a big chain and I'm going to carry it around so that people ask me, hey, what's the chain for? I'm going to say because. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. Weigh in the comments if you have an opinion. And now let's head into my weekly wrap up here real quick. This is my week 20 results. As you know, the program is move more, eat better, lift heavy things. For moving more, I try to move 10,000 steps every day. And I apologize, I cannot see the thing in that. So there's my steps. 14,414 steps was my daily average for week 20. And my philosophy on the 10,000 steps is do more when you can. So you can see like day one, 18,700 steps, because some days I won't be able to do as much. But this is a pretty good week. I mean, I was significantly above on every day except for day 6. And day 6, I even beat it. So very satisfied with those results. Eat better. The concept here is just eat better than what you normally do, at home, incrementally each day. No crash dieting, no dieting at all, in my opinion. If you look at it statistically, most people on diets fail. They do not last over the long term. So what we're trying to do is come up with sustainable, healthy eating. And I'm doing this for myself for a year, where every week I throw my weekly meal planner up here for everyone to look at, which probably nobody really does with a fine tooth comb, and that's okay. It's more accountability for myself, but also to give people ideas in case you need some ideas on meal planning, because sometimes just trying to figure out what you want to eat is half the problem. Nothing out of the norm here, except for on that very first day, Sunday, filet mignon, lobster claws, shrimp cocktail, and some champagne. That was Jesse and I's 19th wedding anniversary. So we had a little bit of a celebration. But other than that, it was kind of a normal standard run-of-the-mill week. And I did well. No super bad food. So super happy about that. Moving into lift heavy things. So I'm doing a full body circuit. I have found for me, with regard to like how much time I have to put into strength training, to me, it just makes more sense to do a full body circuit 3 times a week, at least at this stage. As I kind of grow more in my fitness journey, I may change that up. I have mentioned before, I actually, one of my vanity goals is I want to get bigger arms. I've always wanted to have slightly bigger arms. And so I am doing, you can see on the side of the slide there, a personal bicep and tricep arm circuit. I'm doing this 30-day challenge. And the reason why I did it is because I was having difficulty in the first several weeks of this, or not the first several. The first several was good, but probably like midway through this, I started kind of falling off of the strength training part and just relying on the moving more for weight loss. And I needed something just to get my mind into, okay, let's go. You may not want to do the strength training, but you need to do the strength training. And so this little challenge just kept me on track. This week, I did 2 full days of this. And then on week 3, and I think here's where the challenge comes in handy. I'm sorry, in day 3 of this week, I actually, I just did the arm portion. Something's better than nothing, but that's the benefit of doing a challenge. And so I really do recommend, if you're struggling with working out, whether it's the moving more with the steps or any kind of strength training or even food, create small challenges yourself, a 1-week challenge, a 3-week challenge, a month-long challenge, whatever it is, and just like make it a game for yourself, a mental game to help you stay on track and to create a habit. And so having this arm challenge helped me get my strength training in. Wasn't optimal to skip the full body circuit, but again, something's better than nothing. And then wrapping it up with the week results. I ended last week at 190 pounds. I ended this week 20, at 188 pounds. That's a 2-pound reduction in 1 week, which is pretty fantastic. And so I'm happy with those results. And as you can see, I'm here in the future speaking to you now. It's one of my superpowers. I currently weigh 189. So I'm kind of hovering in that range right now. But overall, I'm very happy with this. And I think anybody can follow this program, or virtually anybody can follow this program. It's move more, 10,000 steps a day or more, eat better, incrementally over time, always trying to eat whole, healthy foods versus junk, and just cut out the worst of the junk. But again, incrementally over time, no diets, and then lift heavy things, do some form of strength training as we age, because we know we lose muscle mass as we age. And it's going to become very increasingly important in our 60s, 70s, and 80s from a mobility standpoint, and keeping us out of the emergency department with broken hips. Lastly, I wanted to thank all our new subscribers. Those of you, I appreciate it. Hopefully you're getting some value out of this. I'd really like to hear if you're in the midst of your weight loss challenge, where you're at. Drop a comment about that. And lastly, if you have any ideas for any content, we got on our very last video, we got an idea. So Jesse's working on that for a video for her, but we'll be glad to answer any questions you have, what your challenges might be with losing weight. Jesse and I have had plenty. We can share our experience, but Most of all, we're just thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and we look forward to talking to you in the next video. Thanks.